Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, Maseches ARACHIN Daf Hey. We are holding on Daled base, 3 lines from the bottom, right in the middle of the sugya called Nidoin b'chvoidoi. Kvoidoi is by significance. So do we judge the pledge by its significance? Meaning, suppose he pledged the head of his slave, the head of his donkey. These were examples that were cited in the Brisa at the conclusion of yesterday's daf. So the Brisa tells us that actually he's only obligated to forward the value of that element, of that section. So let's say he says, the head of my donkey is hegdish. The Gemara concluded that what he meant was he's going to use the value of that part of the donkey, or that part of the eved, part of the slave, for purchasing of a carbon for the mizbeach. So it's not going to be donated to the kabayis, to the building fund, to the treasury. Rather, he's going to be using it to purchase a carbon. The Brisa states that he doesn't owe the full value of the full slave or the full donkey. Rather, it's 50-50. He becomes like a partner with hegdish. So he has to forward half the value of a slave or the donkey to be used towards purchasing of a carbon. Another example was a para, right? He pledged the value of the head of his cow to be used as a purchasing for a carbon. It doesn't obligate him for the full value of the cow. And the question was why? Earlier we discussed that when it comes to ARACHIN, right, which is also a monetary pledge, if one relates to the head, the heart, a vital organ, which pretty much represents the full life force of a person, that will trigger a full obligation as per the value of the full person. You can differentiate between the head, the heart, and the rest of the body. It's representative of the entirety of the person. So the Gemara sought to distinguish between both halachas, to find a distinction between ARACHIN and this Brisa, which said otherwise, and the answer was, it depends where the money's going to. This idea that if you refer to a aver, a limb, shaneshama tliba, which is a vital organ, the source of his life force, that we say you're obligated to the full value of that person, is limited to bedek habayis, when it's simply a monetary pledge, money to the hegdish. Then we have the halacha of aver shaneshama tliba, or another way of saying it is nidai b'chvoidai. We judge it by its significance. So it's a vital organ. It's as though you refer to the full person. Because that's where we find this halacha. We find that by ARACHIN, which is merely a monetary pledge, but in terms of kachim mizbeach, when we're speaking about committing to buying a carbon with its value, it's a different system. That's about value per se, not about life force. So, if you refer to part of the person, so that part, you're obligated to that part, the value of that part, and no more. Okay, Elul Kasha, 3 lines from the bottom. So we made this chiluk. This answer was depends what the purpose of the pledge is. Elul Kasha, had b'kachim mizbeach, the Brisa, which limits his obligation to the part that he pledged, is kachim mizbeach, when the intention was to use the money to buy a carbon. Whereas the idea of nidan b'chvoidai, it's judged by its kavod, by its significance. Vital organ equals the whole person. That's by bedek habayis, where the Torah introduces this concept. So basically, before we start the next sugya, just to organize things, there are 3 levels of pledges. Let's call it 1, 2, and 3. 1 is he donates a carbon, kedushas haguf, an actual animal for the mizbeach. That's going to be coming up very soon in the Gemara. So far we haven't done that. Level 3, all the way on bottom, is bedek habayis, plain donation to the treasury, like an ARACHIN, like a ned or a vow in terms of value, that you're forwarding the value to. Then we have something in the middle, which is the subject matter of the Brisa that we discussed yesterday. The head of the slave, the head of the donkey to be used toward the purchase of a carbon. That's somewhere in the middle. It has an element of money, an element of carbon to it, because it's money for a carbon. And that was the topic of this price. Kachib Izbech, promising to use the money, the value of this donkey, or the value for the purchase of a carbon. In this case, we say you're limited to what you pledged, irrespective of the vitality of the organ. Ask the Gemara, so you are learning the Brisa, which cites 3 examples of a partial pledge. Part of a donkey, part of a slave, and part of a cow. So this is all with respect to pledging to buy a carbon. Let's move on to the third case of the cow. Furthermore, even if he pledged Roish Parazu Hegdish, the head of this cow, which is really suitable for a carbon, it's going to be Hegdish. Hegdish only gets the value of the head. And the question is, why? Amai. In this case, since Rashi adds 3 words, since the actual cow in this case is suitable for carbon use, unlike the donkey, here it's potentially a carbon. So let this kedusha that he is applying to it spread and expand throughout the entire animal, and now the whole cow should become a carbon. Once the kedusha arrives, it takes over. Haven't we learned this halacha in the following brayso Eimer? We turn to the next topic. Okay, he has a healthy, kosher animal. He says the leg will be an oila. Does that kedusha affect the entire thing? Does it spread throughout the entire animal? Yochel perhaps take kula oila, the whole thing becomes an oila. Talmud Bavli, no. Kol asher yitem mimenu l'Hashem hiya kodesh. So even a partial kedusha works. So in this case, we only pledge the leg. Mimenu kodesh, part of it becomes kodesh, but not the entire thing. V'lo kula kodesh. So now, what's the solution? What do you do with this animal which is partially kodesh? Perhaps you could just redeem it, take the kedusha, transfer it onto money. No, tamalami yiyeh. Yiyeh means it stays intact. It stays intact, which means to say it's not just monetarily kaddish, which allows for a transfer of kedusha onto other monies. On the other hand, it's not really fully inherently kaddish. Only the leg is kaddish. What do? Okay, what's the solution? Sell it to a person who needs a carbon oila, and let him offer it as a carbon. Timachaj be sold to those who need a carbon oila. Okay, sell it to him. But the money that you receive is yours, because the whole animal was not kaddish except for the leg. Chutz, except for that limb, for which you can't charge. Now Rashi asks, brings a Gemara in Tmura. Now this fellow bought this carbon, so he bought a carbon minus a leg. How can he satisfy his carbon obligation using this animal which is partially not his? And the Gemara there explains exactly how this works. In any case, Divrei Rameir. So this is Rameir, Rabbi Yehuda as well. That when he's magdash the leg, only that becomes kaddish. However, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, they disagree. Once the kedusha attaches itself to an animal, we're talking an inherent kedusha, level 1, right? Real kedusha is haguf. So they say once the kedusha is there, it expands and spreads throughout the entire behemoth. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, how do we know that if he commits the leg of the animal as an oila, the whole thing becomes an oila? So they learn from that very same pasuk. Yiyah kodesh tells you, the rabbi says, cool, even if the kedusha is only applied to the leg, the whole thing becomes kodesh. And it's going to be offered as a carbon. So regarding a limited kedusha, let's say on the leg only, but even according to Rabbi, the first opinion that says kedusha on the leg does not expand throughout the entire animal. That's only because it's a leg. It's a non-vital organ. Hanimili da'agdish, that's limited to a fellow who is magdish davar she'eina neshamat tluya bay, the leg which is not a vital organ. But the heart, the head, he's magdish that. The whole thing becomes kaddish. It spreads into the entire korban, the entire animal. So that's a kasha. Now brisa, where we said that if he's magdish the head of his para, which is technically suitable for a korban, it stays there. It stays limited to just the head. Why? Let the whole thing become kaddish. The answer is this discussion here, that the neshama tluyah takes over the whole thing. That's when it was level 1. He was magdish that vital organ as a korban, to be used as a korban in mizbeach. Level 1 spreads throughout the whole thing. Our brisa, the head of the cow, is talking about level 2. His pledge was to direct the value of this limb for purchase of a korban. In that case, we don't say that kedusha takes over and spreads throughout the korban. The answer is Habu Kedushas Haguf. We just spoke about Kedushas Haguf, the highest level Kedusha, that once it's there, it takes over. Habu Kedushas Damim. As opposed to the previous discussion, where it was Kedushas Damim, it was a monetary pledge. That type of Kedusha doesn't have the ability to affect the entire animal. Ask the Gemara. Really? V'amaru de Amar. This is Abaye asking Rava. He says, but didn't you yourself tell us? V'amaru de Amar, you taught in Maseches Tmura that even level 2 has the same ability as level 1 with respect to spreading and expanding. V'amaru de Amar Magdish, or Higdish, Zachar is a male, a ram, L'damav. He took a ram which technically can be used as a korban, but he decided to pledge it as level 2. I'm going to take the value and use it for a korban. It doesn't stay at level 2, it rises up, it gets upgraded to level 1. Higdish Zachar L'damav, Kaddish, Kedushas Haguf. So likewise, in the case of the head of the cow, it's true, he intended level 2, which is only a monetary commitment, but let it now be upgraded and turn into level 1, and then spread throughout the entire animal. L'kash, the answer is like this. In the case of the ram, it's true, he was referring to level 2, but the entire ram was committed to level 2. So once level 2 arrives on the entire animal, it gets upgraded to level 1. L'kash, hadagdish kuli is managing the entire thing. But in contrast to the previous price, the head of the cow was just a limited, just the cow, just the head. Hadagdish chad aver is magdish 1 aver. So Rashi says, we don't say a double upgrade. It's called a migo. Migo, since he offered level 2, it gets upgraded to level 1. And since he offered the head, it spreads throughout. We don't say double migu. It's too far away. 2 steps we don't say. So again, if he's magdish the entire ram as level 2, it gets upgraded to level 1. So 1 upgrade we say, but just the head to now spread throughout, that's 1 upgrade. And then another upgrade, go from level 2 to level 1, that's too far gone. Too much traveling. Says the really chadever nami ibui boilan. The truth is that we had a similar question regarding even a single limb that was committed. The boy Rabbi had a question on this matter as well. Higdish aver l'damav. He was magdish level 2, but even just 1 aver. Ma, what happens there? So apparently, there's plenty of room to think that you can make a double upgrade. Says the Gemara, ki boilan betam. I only asked a question regarding a unblemished animal. So you can say, double upgrade. Really he's suitable, so even though the Kedusha was only on 1 limb, it spreads, and then it gets upgraded to level 1. Hachab balmum. As opposed to our brisa with the cow, we're talking about a blemished cow. Oh, he's unsuitable for akrava. So here we don't say that it spreads throughout and it's fully committed. Dumid the chamar, just like the other cases, we assume it's similar. It's a matching case to the other cases in the brisa. We spoke about a slave, a donkey, which are not suitable for korban. Right? So in this case, there's no, we don't upgrade it because it's not really suitable for a carbon. Well, says the Gemara, Balmum, Nami Ibuyi Boilam. The truth is that even by a Balmum, we find that Rabbah considered the possibility that in fact the pledge encompasses the entire thing, even though he only related to part of it. Right? If it's a vital organ, then he's committed to the entire thing. The boy Rab had a question. Fellow gets up and says, I'm committing the value of my head to be used to purchase of a carbon for the mizbeach. What happens there? Shall we say that he's committed to his entire value because the head is a vital organ and now expands and commits to the entire thing? Or do we say, no, it's only, a partial commitment, 50-50, right? What's the halach? So clearly, even relating to a head of a person who's not suitable for akrava, right? He's like the balmum that we talked about. Still, Rabbi entertained the option that in fact he's committed to the entire thing. And we're so sure that it doesn't. Says the Gemara, Ki Boilan, my question was only Mekami de Ashmal Hamasnisa. The question was only before Rabbi heard about this brisa. But Hashta de Shamal Hamasnisa, once he heard about the brisa, where it clearly states that by a balmum, something unsuitable for akrava, we don't say it spreads and expands and he's committed to entire value. There's no question there. We don't have a discussion about that possibility. Okay, so that answers all the questions that we have. So let's just recap again. Level 1 is where he takes a kosher animal, is magdashit, kedushas haguf lemizbeach. There we say, look, if you magdash only the leg, there's machlekes whether it spreads. If you magdash an eiver shanshama tluyiba, all agree it spreads throughout. Now, if it's level 3, which is merely kedushas damim, he makes a pledge for the bedek habayis, like the ARACHIN. Over there again, we say vital organ is representative of the entire life force, is committed to the full value. Let's focus on level 2, which is sort of a mix, and hybrid. It has an element of money, element of mizbeach, because he's pledging the value of X to be used to purchase a carbon for the mizbeach. Kedushas damim limizbeach is what we call it. So there we learn that if it's a behema, which is kosher, which is tam, roi for the mizbeach, like the zachar, like the ayil over there, the whole thing becomes kedushas haguf gets upgraded. So a single upgrade we certainly apply. Now let's say it was just one aver. Shall we say, okay, apply a double upgrade, spread throughout, and then upgrade it to kedushas haguf? That's a question. But it certainly does not apply if the animal is not suitable, if it's a balmum, or if it's a person. In which case he's only obligated as per the value of that specific element that he referred to. Gufa, let's go back to this question that we just mentioned, which was posed before we heard of the brisa, and then we concluded otherwise, but now we had a shaila. Gufa boy Rab had a shaila, dmei roish l'gav mizbeach mao. He pledged the value of his head for the purchase of a carbon to mizbeach. What happens? Is he now committed to his full value? Because the head is kvoide, right? Because of its significance, it represents his whole, chiyus. Neither mechvoide do we judge it based on significance, in which case it's obligated to his full value, or maybe not. What are the factors at play? On the one hand, they need mechvoide. We don't find matters of monetary pledges that do not have this concept of judged by significance. Meaning, a vital organ triggers a full obligation. Like by ARACHIN, right? Or you can say, the fact is here, it's not just a monetary pledge, it's meant for purchase of a carbon. There we don't find this idea of nidain b'chvoida when he pledges, certain amount to be used for purchasing of a korban, we don't find this idea that if it relates to a vital organ, that it obligates him to the full amount. We don't find that. So here it's sort of a hybrid situation. There's an element of, money, which has the idea of nidim b'chvaydei, but there's an element of mizbeach, where this idea was not really applied. Take it, we leave it unresolved. Now, again, this was before he heard of the Brisa, which now confirmed for us that in fact the answer is no. The answer is no. That he's only obligated to that portion. It's basically a 50-50 deal with the Hegdish, but no more than that. Next question. By Rava, a similar idea, a situation where we have sort of a confluence of two factors going in, opposite directions. By Rava, erki alai l'gav mizbeach. I'm pledging my erach, which is that fixed rate that the Torah prescribes, l'gav mizbeach. But I'm not going to give it to the treasury. I'm going to be using it to buy a korban for the mizbeach. Mao. So what happens if you can't afford? Now, typically, by erachin, there's a halacha called heseg yad, what you couldn't afford, what you couldn't access, meaning it's based on your financial standing. If you can't afford, we give you a discount. What happens in this case? There's an element of erach, but there's also an element of mizbeach here. No, nidin b'heseg yad. We apply the heseg yad system, the affordability, system. Oy ein nidin b'heseg yad. Perhaps it doesn't apply. Why? Why would you say yes or no? On the one hand, le'ashchan be'erachin ein nidin b'heseg yad. We don't find that erachin does not have heseg yad, meaning it's a form of erachin. We should apply heseg yad to him. Oydim, on the other hand, le'ashchan l'gam mizbeach b'nefkel b'shavyai. Typically, when it comes to pledging for mizbeach, it's based on actual value. You don't find discounts for, financial difficulties. Take it, we leave it unresolved. Another shaila, where we have a confluence of two factors, by Rav Ashi. Higdish sada achuza l'gav mizbeach mal. So typically, if a person donates his sada achuza, a family estate, to the treasury, there's all kinds of halachas in terms of the redemption rate. It's 50 shekel per base chomer so'irim, where you plant 15 so. It's a whole system that the Torah prescribes, a fixed rate of redemption. Now in this case, he didn't donate it to the treasury. Again, he's going to use the value to buy an oila. So how do we treat this fellow? What kind of rate does he get? Mao, miyamrina, shall we say? The fact is, it's a sadeh achuza. It works with the standard 50 shekel rate. Miyamrina, we don't find an exception to this idea of sadeh achuza. We don't find it being redeemed unless you give the prescribed amount. Al base zera chemes are a place where you can plant 15 chemers, 15 of so'irim of barley. That goes for the rate of a chamishim shekel, costs $50. On the other hand, it's not a straight-out donation. It's a pledge to be used towards purchase of a korban. There, typically, it works based on actual value. Rashi says, look, typically a korban is animals that you donate, and the Torah never, pins us down to any fixed rates. It's about the actual value of the animal. If it wants to be, redemption is based on value. So perhaps here as well, take it, we leave it unresolved. Says the Mishnah, Pachos ben chodesh nidar avalei nerach. So take a look at the parsha of Erachin. Lowest fixed rate, applies to a newborn past 30 days. But let's say he's below 30 days, a real newborn. So he's not subject to the system of Erachin, but he is nidar. You can make a vow based on his actual value. Pachos ben chodesh nidar avalei nerach. Tan Rabbana. Hamarach pachos ben chodesh. A person gets up and says, I'm giving the erach of this newborn. And the erech doesn't apply. So his getaway scot-free, or perhaps did he mean really nether, even though he said erech? In which case we work based on market value. So there's a machlokes. Rameir Omer, nice and dumb. He's committed to the actual value. Right? Based on what a person would be willing to pay in the slave market. What he said is invalid because he said erech, and erech doesn't apply at this tender young age. So what's the machlekes about? A person wouldn't just utter for naught. Which means to say, He committed to something. He wanted to commit, even though he said erech. Okay, if erech doesn't work, I'll give the neder, the actual value. He knows deep down that for this newborn there's no erech. What did he mean? He meant for value. He's committed to that. Rabbanan Sabri, a person can sometimes talk, for naught. So even though he said something, it has no validity. So Rav teaches us a halacha. We'd like to know which opinion does it line up with. The halacha is instead of referring to a newborn, he says, I'm giving the erech of this utensil. There's no erech to a utensil, right? So he pays the value, nice and damav. That's going to Rameir. Similar to the newborn. Even though erech doesn't apply, but he'll be committed to the other system. Pshita to Rameir Asya. Obviously, it's going to Rameir. Why do we even have to explore this? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Rameir Asya. Who then? I mean, this is Rameir, at his best, so to speak. Says the Gemara, perhaps there's room to think. Afilu Rabban. In this case, even the Rabban would agree that he's committed to the value of the vessel. Why? What's the difference between the newborn and the vessel? Hasam, because by the newborn who did toy, perhaps he's making a mistake. They exempt him because maybe he's making a mistake. Hasam with the toy. Savar. Ki eiche de ika. Erchen ben chodesh. Economic lepachas ben chodesh. He's not so well versed in the parsha of erech and all the numbers. He's not a expert mathematician, so he doesn't recall everything, all the numbers and the rates. And he's thinking to himself, okay, just like there's an erech for a month old, there's an erech for a newborn. Which means to say that, as Rashi explains, perhaps the Rabbanan agree. A person wouldn't typically pledge for nothing, but he's making a mistake, and he meant for erech. And since no erech, he's potter. But here by the vessel, nobody in the world thinks that erech applies to a car. Certainly a person knows good and well shein erech l'kli, is no erech for a kli. V'gamar, so why did he commit an erech of the kli? V'gamar v'am l'shem dam, he really meant the damim. He meant its value. That's what I would think. Kamash, on the point of Rabbi is to say no. The Rabbanan take issue with Rameir's concept that a person wouldn't waste his words. A person sometimes does waste his words. He meant nothing. So even when he knows it's null and void, he knows that a car has no erech. He meant nothing. He was just kidding. Kamashma. Hence, Rabbi has to teach us the background, the understanding, the basis for the machlekes. It's a simple question of whether we assume a person is just speaking without value, or as Rameir says, no. We assume he's serious to a certain extent, and whatever his word can trigger, whatever pledge it can obligate him to, he's obligated. Whether it's a newborn, whether it's a kli. Okay, we turn to Talmud Bavli. So now Rav stated that this halacha, that when you pledge the erech of a kli, you're obligated to its value, is based on Rameir. Well, why did he have to actually tell us that it is so, that according to Rameir is obligated? I mean, obviously, Rameir would hold that the same concept applies to the kli, just like the newborn. All the time there's room to think that perhaps, again, the reason why Rameir obligates by the newborn is not because a person wouldn't speak for naught, and once he's committing to something, and that applies equally to the newborn as to the kli. Perhaps that's not the reason. All the time, perhaps we can understand the opinion differently. The position is based on a different svara. All the time, the Rameir, the reason why Rameir obligates in a case of a newborn is not because he is trying to obligate himself on something. Hasam, the gaz are pach, it's exer d'Rabbanan. We want to prevent confusion amongst the masses. It's exer d'Rabbanan. So even though you're exempt, we obligate you to pay because people might confuse and say, well, look, He just committed to an erech. He's getting away scot-free, not realizing that it was a newborn. They won't realize. Not everybody differentiates between a 29-day-old baby and a 30-day-old baby, right? It's not so clear. The Gaza Pachas Men Chodesh, they obligate you by the less than 30-day-old, Auto Ben Chodesh on account of the 30-day-old. But in the case of a car, there's no room for confusion, no reason to make it gzera. Everybody realizes a car has no erech. Of course you're exempt. Perhaps there's no reason to obligate him. The point is, nope. Because the correct understanding of Rameir is, time of the Rameir, a person would not pledge for naught. So that applies equally to a newborn or to a car. That's the conclusion. He pledged erech of something which doesn't have erech. Newborn or a clear. Rameir says, chayiv a neder. Market value. Chacham says pater. Rameir says enodam moitzi devar latala. He wouldn't pledge for nothing. So if it's not erech, at least Chacham say it has no validity. He meant nothing. Keman az lahadam Rabba bar Yosef Amarav. So we have another quote of Rab. Who is it going like? Some say Amrab Yeva bar Yosef Amar Rav. Ha magdash behemas chaveirei. So he turns to his neighbor's animal. He says, I'm being magdash that behema. Nice and dameh, he owes its value. You can't give away the other person's animal, but you can pledge its value. Command Rameir. This is like Rameir. So although we can't really accept the literal wording of what he said, because it's not his to be magdash, but at least he really meant the value. As per Rameir, who assumes that he's pledging the value. Says the Gemara, Rav Chadazim already taught us that according to Rameir, this would apply like by the vessel, by the car. Why repeat it again with the neighbor's animal? Right? The Amar of Gidlam Rav just had the halacha. Omer erech kli ze'olai, commits to the erech of this car. Nois and damav, he's obligated to its value. So what do we see? That it triggers some obligation, whatever it could. Perhaps there's room to differentiate. A person knows a car has no erech. So his true intention was to obligate himself the value. He meant the value. But an animal, sure, it's his neighbor's, but the animal itself is suitable for inherent kedusha. Perhaps what he really meant to say is, look, there's room to think that he meant to say, I'm going to make an attempt, trying to convince my neighbor to sell to me and use it as my curb. So it will be kaddish from now. And I'll bring it as a curb. So he's committing sort of a conditional kedusha. I mean, magdash it pending my purchase. Okay, that's what he meant. But if I'm not going to have success in getting it from him, I would may, but the value, I'm not committing to the value. If I get it, fine. Otherwise, I'm nothing. He didn't mean the value. Come on, the point is yes. That we assume what he meant was that whatever it is, I'll do. Now it's interesting that really it's an error. You can't do that. You can't be magdash your neighbor's animal pending its purchase. I mean, it's not yours yet to be magdash. So it's really a toe. It's a mistake. So there's room to think that maybe he was mistaken, and truthfully, there's nothing there. He didn't mean to be magdash the value, to commit himself to the value. Avad made lo kamar kamash, and the point is yes. That, he meant whatever he can do. Just like the erech of the newborn, erech of the kli. It's not going to work as an erech. He meant it as whatever will work. So he's pledging the value of that item, the value of this behemoth. Amar Avashi, v'domar alai. His halacha is only if he says, this behemoth is upon me, I'm responsible. So we apply it to a monetary obligation. But if he says this one will be an oila, so it's an object-based commitment. In this case, it's null and void. Because he didn't commit himself. He didn't pledge to bring the value, to use the value for purchase of a carbon. He was item focused. The item is not really his, so it's not null and void. Okay, so in conclusion, if one pledges the erech of something which doesn't have erech, newborn, or a kli, the Rameir says he's obligated to the value at least. The person would not utter in vain, so he meant whatever he can obligate himself in. Chacham say it's null and void. And the same idea would apply to a neighbor's animal. Says the Mishnah. What about a goy? Oived gechavim? Can he initiate an erech? Can he be the subject of a yid's erech? Oived gechavim rameh oimer nerech. He can be the subject of my erech. Aval he can't himself pledge an erech. Rabbi Yehuda reverses it. Rabbi Oimer just the opposite. Marich, he can initiate an erech. He can point to another yid and say, well, I'm committed to that erech and give the money to the treasury. Aval nerech, but he himself cannot be the subject of an erech. And it's based on the psukim we'll see in the Gemara. Now both Rameir and Rabbi agree that the nether system does apply to him. Right? If he says, I'm pledging the value, the market value of that person, or somebody pledges on him, it works. Tanarabban. So the psukim of Erachin begin with a reference to Bnei Yisrael. Daber Bnei Yisrael. Tanarabban Bnei Yisrael. So we learn from there, only a Bnei Yisrael our ma'arichin can initiate an erech. As opposed to a guy. And perhaps they cannot be the subject of an erech either. So you can't point to a guy and commit to his erech. Ish, right? It says Bnei Yisrael. Ish. Ish is generic. Even a guy can be the subject of my erech. Dibra Rameir. Okay, so according to Rameir, subject yes, but not initiator. Amar Rameir. Why? Why do I prefer going this way over that way? I mean, the pasuk is not really, it's undefined. The pasuk, on the one hand, says only a yid, limited to Bnei Yisrael, and then it expands it to anybody. So something he's in, something is out. Why do I prefer that he's the subject but not the initiator? We have one pasuk which expands and includes the guy, and the other pasuk which excludes him. So why do I go this way? Why do I say nerech v'lemarach he can be the subject of and not the initiator of? Because we find the Torah expands ben erachin yoser mi b'ma'arichin. We find that the pasuk allows more options by subject of nerech as opposed to initiators of nerech. I'll give you an example. Right, these individuals, they can be the subject of an erech, but they cannot be initiators of erechin. Nerachin avli marichin. Likewise, a guy, we assume that he belongs in the nerach slot and not in the marich slot. Rabbi Yehuda is just the opposite. So we have Bnei Yisrael, right? That pasuk which excludes the guy regarding nerachin, regarding becoming the subject of an erech. They can't be the subject. What about initiating? Yochel, I would think, the guy can initiate. Ish allows him. So why do I go this way? We have a pasuk which includes, the other one which excludes. So why do I pick this way? Why do I say the guy could make an erech, but not become the subject of an erech? Because we find that marech has more options than erech. When we find that the pasuk allowed more people to do the initiation of the erech, the Yosef more mi b'nei erachin rather than the subjects. Why? I'll give you an example. These undefined gender individuals, they can initiate an erech, but they can't be subject of an erech. So basically, the psukim can go either way. Rameir chooses to say that a guy can be a nerach but not a marach. Rabbi goes the other way. Amar Rava. The conclusion is hilchasek the Rameir mistavra. I will adopt Rameir's halachic position. The guy can be nerach but not ma'arich. But in terms of his reasoning, not sure. Hilchasek the Rameir mistavra, but Taimei, his reasoning, like mistavra, doesn't really sit well with me. On the other hand, Taimei the Rabbi mistavra, I prefer Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning, but his halacha, his conclusion, not. Hilchasek the mistavra. And he explains. Hilchasek the Rameir mistavra. I prefer Rameir's position, halachic position, which is that a guy can only be the subject of an erech, but not initiate an erech. So we have a different pasuk, where we exclude the Goyim from donating to our building fund. This was by Ezra at the time of return to the Eretz Yisrael. They rebuilt the Beis Hamikdash. They left the Goyim out of it. Don't donate to our Beis Hamikdash. It's not for you and us to join together to finance our building of Beis Hashem. So they don't deserve contributing to our Beis Hamikdash. But Taimulim is Stavra. But the basis for this position, the reasoning, I'm not going to go along with that. So the conclusion, but not the conclusion, yes, but not the background. Because he's based on the phenomenon of being subjects of, but not initiators. Well, there's room to differentiate between a guy and them. These are very different. They don't have the proper, mature mental capacity to commit themselves. But who's to say a guy would have the same status? So his reasoning, I'm not so sure of, but his halacha I agree with, based on the pasuk, which excludes the guys, preempts the guys' donations. On the other hand, time of the reading Mistabra, I prefer Abuda's reasoning, because he compares it to Nadragonus. Even though they have Deya, full Deya, Matinu, Rachmana, Torah excludes them from becoming subjects of Erech. So that makes more sense to me, but Hilchas Mistabra, his actual halachic position, I don't agree with. Because he allows the guy to donate. No, it's not your business. Livna is basically. Ask the Gemara. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, what does Rabbi do with this pasuk, which disallows the guy's donations? Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Avimi, you're right. Nobody is saying that we send this check to the treasury. His erech has kedusha, but it's hidden. It's put away. We don't use it. Because we don't want him to have part in our building. Says the Malami, if that's the case, that it's not going to be used and delivered to the Beis Hamikdash. Really, Me'ila wouldn't apply to it either. The halacha that you divert Hekdesh money for private use, right, which triggers the whole Me'ila process, that's limited to something which is actually going to be incorporated into our Beis Hamikdash. This not, as we find, that's something which does not have Me'ila. It's not Chomesh Chatois HaMesis, those 5 variations of Karban Chatas which are left to die, the owner passed away, etc. They cannot be offered as a carbon. Or a money version of this type of issue that's going to be thrown into the Dead Sea, not going to be used. So although the Rabbanah, you don't use it, but there's no Me'ila, which is limited. Me'ila is limited to something which is actually going to be applied in the Beis Hamikdash. So back to our guy's donation. If you're telling me that we're not using it, there should be no Me'ila, but why don't we learn otherwise? We say that by the guy who donates an actual carbon to the Mizbeach, which you could, by the way, right? But when do we say that there's no Me'ila? Because the pasuk there exempts it from Me'ila, because Mizbeach by a carbon meant for the Beis Hamikdash, which a guy donates is no Me'ila. Because but if he donates something to the treasury, there's Me'ila. Why? You're not using it anyways. In which case, there should be no Me'ila. No, you're right. Of course, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if the guy makes an erech, it's delivered to the treasury. As per your question, they excluded the guy donors from contributing to the building fund. That was a unique juncture in history. They were initiating the new Beis Hamikdash. They didn't want the guy involved. If you pay, you have a say. They don't want the guy involved. Might weaken them, hamper their abilities to proceed and build properly. Who the chsiv as the pasuk itself points to that factor. Rashi explains on the bottom line. The reason why the guy was sending money was not. They had no altruistic intention. They were trying to slow things down. Just the opposite. If they're going to finance it, then they can hold it back. We need a permit. We need this. We need that. Right? They wanted the Yidden to rely on them for financing. We'll have to listen to their advice. And what are they going to do? They're going to delay things. They'll delay matters until they convinced Kurdish back in Persia to stop the building, to halt the construction. That was their intent. So therefore they left them out of the system. But typically a guy can donate a carbon, can donate money to the treasury as well. Okay, so what's the status of a guy vis-a-vis Erech? Rameir says he can be the subject of my Erech, but he can't initiate. Rabbi says he could initiate, but he can't be the subject of, and it's based on psukim and comparisons to various elements. In terms of allowing him to contribute, the Gemara concluded that typically it's not an issue unless there is suspicion of nefarious intent. Okay, all the best to you, and lots of b'suras tov as always.